This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, how there, ho there, it's Jeff Carter Donald. Welcome to another Sport Catastrophe birthday boy. And the birthday boy for today, December the 23rd, was a great player for the Green Bay Packers. He played every year from 1957 to 1966, minus one because of a scandal involving gambling. You can't do that, man. Think about it. Back in the day compared to today's days for gambling. I'll talk about that later. Anyway, he won 4 NFL titles and the first Super Bowl, becoming the first Heisman Trophy winner to win the MVP award, which is sad because, there's a Heisman jinx around it. He's actually the first Heisman Trophy winner to be inducted into both the Pro Football and College Football Hall of Fame. Hornung was actually versatile. He was a running back, a quarterback, and a kicker, and was an all-around college athlete for Notre Dame. His name, Paul Hornung, who was born December 23rd, 1935 in Louisville, Kentucky. He was a legend. He almost went to the University of Kentucky to play football. He was recruited by Bear Bryant when he was with Kentucky, but he chose to Notre Dame. So he started in 1954 as a sophomore. Now, freshmen back in those days, before 1969, I think, were not allowed to be on the varsity squads of the football and basketball teams. So he was a backup fullback, and he blossomed during his junior year, or his third year, if you will, in 1955. He was fourth in total offense with 1,200 plus yards with 6 touchdowns. He actually had 2 big touchdowns on offense alongside 2 interceptions on defense to help Notre Dame shock number 4 Navy when Navy was a powerhouse. In 1956, he led the team offensively, passing, rushing, scoring, kickoff, and punt returns, and punting. He would also play defense. But somehow, in some freaking way, the 1956 Notre Dame Fighting Irish were terrible. They were 2-8. Despite all that, Hornung won the Heisman Trophy winner. The only time that a player from a team that played below 500 was honored. I was like, what the fuck? And all that. That was the horrible thing. And all that. It was like weird. Well, the voting for it was Hornung didn't win in a runaway. He had 197 first place votes. That was even the most first place votes. That was Tom McDonald. Touchdown Tommy McDonald for Oklahoma as a senior running back. Back when Oklahoma was the dominant team of college football in the 1950s, in 1956. It was shocking, all that. So 5 different sections led to 5 different leaders. Hornung won the votes in the Midwest. Jim Brown won the votes in the East. Johnny Majors won the South. Tommy McDonald won the Southwest, and John Brody was first down in the West. Now, everyone was a senior. Yeah, it was shocking. Like, Jim Brown, one of the most legendary running backs of all time. John Brody, one of the best quarterbacks of the 60s and 70s. And even Kenny Payne, who was a legend for Iowa, but would be a massive legend in the CFL. Didn't do it. Yeah, Johnny Majors, the future coach of many teams, would be second in voting. That's unbelievable. He was all around, and they just couldn't get past the 2-8 mark. Anyway, he would play basketball, but actually needed to keep his grades up, so he was asked not to continue. So anyway, he had a degree in business, and Hornung was picked first overall in the 1957 NFL draft by the Packers, who were not that great back then. Anyway, Hornung actually was fantastic. He was the halfback position. Well, we call it running back nowadays, and was the field goal kicker for several seasons. He actually led the NFL in scoring from 59 to 61. During the 1960 season, he put up 176 points in just 176 points in 12 games. Like, he could run for touchdowns for 6 and kick the extra point for 1, field goals for 3. That record actually stood till 2006 when LT, LaDainian Tomlinson, got his 30th touchdown December 17th, making him at 180 points because he had 6 points for your touchdown. Imagine if Horning's 176 points were in 12 games were actually more in like a 14, 16, or even this at this time, the 17 game season. Nevertheless, he put up 19 points to help Green Bay win the NFL championship game. In fact, it was the record for most points scored by a player in the playoffs until Ricky Watters scored 5 touchdowns in the 94 divisional round for San Fran over the Giants. He put up 105 clear running yards for Green Bay when they beat Cleveland for the championship. He was MVP in 1961 for his versatile play, twice to the Pro Bowl, one of only 9 players to win the Heisman and MVP. He was the first. So, anyway, he was also the first player to make a 50-plus yard fair catch kick. Of course, at the time of this taping, we were just a couple days removed from San Diego getting the fair catch kick, which is a team that allows a team that has made a fair catch to attempt a free kick from the spot of the catch. And that's what the Chargers did against the Broncos. So that's what people forget about that rule. And of course, funny thing is now, when I'm taping this, we're a few days away from the that thing happening. Anyway, Hornung would score 5 touchdowns against the Baltimore Colts in 1965, 3 running and 2 catches. Which was strange because the same day, Gale Sayers put up a 6 touchdown performance against San Francisco. Nevertheless, the Packers beating the Colts was huge because it meant that they were tied with the Colts for the Western Conference standings. And of course, West met East in the NFL Championship. There was an extra playoff game which the Packers won in overtime to advance to the NFL Championship. But that game was controversial between the Packers and Colts because that was when Don Chandler allegedly missed a field goal, but they called it. No, he thought he missed the field goal, but they named it good, even though the goalposts, you couldn't tell. The goalposts were too short. And the Colts complained. Don Chandler even snapped his head back and kicked the dirt, thinking he missed the kick, but he made it. But then Vince Lombardi basically told Chandler, never react badly to a missed kick again. So that actually helped the Packers, the NFL out, because they decided to lengthen the length of the goalposts so that, and make them yellow. So when the Packers beat the Colts, they would face Cleveland for the NFL title game, and Hornung would help the Packers beat the Browns. Unfortunately, he would have a pinched nerve in his neck in 1966, and Hornung did not play in Super Bowl I, which the Packers crushed the Chiefs in. He could have played in the fourth quarter, but chose not to. Anyway, Hornung was actually selected in the expansion draft by the New Orleans Saints. So the Saints were thinking, well, Hornung is being unprotected. Let's take him. They did so. Unfortunately, though, Hornung's injury would force him to retire during training camp. The Saints were hoping for Hornung to do well. Also, the fact that they would trade for his running back mate in Green Bay, Jim Taylor. So Hornung and Taylor were known as Thunder and Lightning and could have been Thunder and Lightning for the Saints. Taylor did play a few years for the Saints, but Hornung never did. He actually missed 26 field goals in a season, which is still an NFL record, doing so in 1964. So anyway, in the regular season, running the ball, he got 3,711 yards with 50 touchdowns. From 57 to 66. So yeah, he was pretty good. His number 5 was unofficially retired in July 1967. But there was not a ceremony to have his number on the wall of retired numbers at Lambeau Field. So yeah, so 6 players have had their numbers retired and all that. So anyway, yeah, his number 5 is still, was unofficially retired and not officially retired. The number retirement never became standard because Vince Lombardi, who initiated the number retirement, left the organization 7 months later, and number retirements were not well known or publicized back in the 1960s. Only 4 players have worn number 5 with the Packers since 67, but none since 1988. So it didn't really matter. Anyway, he was known in the U.S. Army and all of that. So anyway, yeah, his penchant for high living actually was disastrous. When in 1963 there was a massive gambling scandal in both Paul Hornung and legendary defensive tackle for the Lions Alex Karras were suspended from football indefinitely for betting on NFL games and associating with undesirable people. Despite all that, his image was untarnished, and both Hornung and Karras were given the chance to come back to the league in 1964, which they did. Hornung even said that it was Lombardi's constant lobbying of Pete Losell that got him rescinded in 1964. So because of Lombardi's efforts, Hornung decided not to have anything to do with gambling. He would never go to Las Vegas and would not even go to the Kentucky Derby. Hornung was a color analyst for CBS broadcast from 75 to 79. I remember Paul Hornung was actually, he was the color commentator for the 1979 Cotton Bowl, if memory serves me right, being with Lindsey Nelson in the booth. So yeah, he did a lot of things and all that. He even did play-by-play for LSU when they were doing Tiger Vision, the pay-per-view things in 1982. So anyway, he would of course die of dementia at age 84 in November 2020, which he felt like had multiple concussions. So he was survived by his wife of 41 years. So yeah, Paul Hornung may not have had the best life. He may have won a Heisman Trophy just because of the school he went to, and not because of the record. I mean, 2-8, yeesh. Even beating out Jim Brown, which was wrong in a lot of people's books. And even though he had that gambling thing in 1963, his image is untarnished in Green Bay lore. I mean, dude led Green Bay back to respectability in the 1960s, and you can't beat that. Anyhow, I'm going to do.